All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Ari. I'm an account executive here at Purview. We're going to get into today's topic in a second, but first I wanted to go through some housekeeping items as you see on the screen. If you have any comments or questions during today's topic, you can type those into the chat, put them in the Q&A. We'll be answering them as they come up, but we'll also have a generalized Q&A at the end where we'll collect all those, and participation is encouraged. We also have a note from our lawyers here pertaining to liability, just saying that anything we say is not legal advice. And this is today's topic. As you saw, we will be talking about how attorneys can collect and manage medical imaging. This is something that is not only a general topic we'll be going into, but also comes from some customer feedback from the clients that we currently work with. And I think some of what we'll talk about today will be very exciting for your practices. So I'm looking forward to discussing that. We'll look at current practices, some of the problems that attorneys and paralegals run into when it comes to managing their medical imaging, and some tailored solutions to address those. I'm joined today by our subject matter expert, Les Trackman, who is a licensed attorney and an evangelist for making the sharing and access of medical imaging easier. So thanks for joining us, Les.
My pleasure.
So Les, it might be helpful for us to start with high level, why exactly medical imaging is important in medical malpractice litigation.
Yeah, so it's a good question, Ari, and it is one that we hear resoundingly from our clients and from our prospects when we speak to them, and that's that when you're involved in litigation for personal injury or medical malpractice or similar types of litigation, it's really good to be able to tell a real story, and if you can tell that story in living color, in true medical imagery, it's much more compelling, both in terms of your ability to settle a case, but it's also compelling when you show that to a jury. So using real, as we call it, raw medical imaging, the same as a physician would review themselves to do a procedure or to review a procedure, is very compelling.
Great. And when we talk about medical imaging, the term DICOM often comes up. What exactly is DICOM?
Yeah, so DICOM is all you really have to know is it's a standardized format. So you can see on the screen, it's Digital Imaging and Communications in Medicine, nice little acronym that you can either remember or not. But it's the standard format. So the nicest part about radiology or radiological images is that 99.9% of them are in DICOM format, which means that if you have a good DICOM viewer, and you're going to need to have a specialized viewer to see DICOM, but if you've got a good one, it can look at any type of DICOM, and that ranges all the way from X-rays to ultrasounds to nuclear to CTs, MRs, anything that you've ever heard of. Those are all DICOM, and they all show up in a good viewer.
And that's a helpful description. When we talk about what DICOM is and how it shows up, so you're looking at it in a viewer, we sometimes see it in terms of studies, series, slices. Can you help us break down what those terms mean?
Sure, and these are terms that probably worth understanding, but you don't have to know the real technical details of it. So a study is typically a patient comes in for an exam and a scan is done. That's typically a study. We call it a patient on a modality in a session. That's a study. But a study is potentially comprised of, a set of series, which is maybe different parts of the anatomy or different views of the anatomy. And each series is composed of images themselves. So a study, we'll say, for example, a CT, might actually have 1,000 images in it, might be comprised of 2 or 3 studies. And that altogether is called a study. When you look at it in a DICOM viewer, you're going to see image by image by image. So you're going to see, for the most part, 2D representations. Now, I think we'll be able to show you, perhaps in today's session, a 3D representation, which is a 3D reconstructed representation. So it takes all these 2D images and puts it together into 3D. And I'd like to say it's the analogy. It's akin to, I don't know if well, none of you are as old as I am, but it's akin to when I was a kid, where you got one of those little cartoon books, a little teeny one, and you flip the pages with your thumb. And when they went fast enough, it looked like it was a moving picture. That's the same way that we depict multiple dimensions and potentially depict time in something like an ultrasound using DICOM. So it is multiple images that show up together to indicate either a 3D or perhaps a time-based image.
It's a nice overview because in the medical imaging world, we use the word studies often, and it can sometimes be confusing when we simultaneously use the word images. So that's a nice introduction.
It's,
Now,
it's actually it's actually okay for all the lawyers in the audience. If you don't get what a study is, you may find out that some of the physicians you talk to don't get what a study is either, because we
that's
talk to
true.
physicians all the time and they ask us, what do you mean by study? So it is just a term of art. You can call it a medical image and nobody will get mad at you.
It's true. It's true. So in line with that, we have a poll that will be coming up asking about how you are currently managing your medical imaging in your firm. So a few of the options here are mostly on CDs or DVDs, through a local network like your office, computer, hard drive, through a cloud file sharing program like Dropbox, through your case management system, or on a PAC. So if you could answer that, we're going to be very interested to see what the audience is currently doing.
Yeah, and I would doubt that we're going to be surprised by these answers, Ari. When they come back, we'll wait and see. Sometimes we are surprised. There's a good number of people in the audience. I see some
Yes.
familiar names in the audience as well. So these are people that perhaps have listened to one of our webinars in the past, and including a few that are clients of ours today. Um, but we're mostly behind the times in terms of how we deal with medical imaging, and I don't mean just lawyers, but I mean the whole medical profession seems to be behind the times. But let's wait and see what the poll shows us.
Sure, sure. And while we're waiting on that, Les, so a thought came up here as we were talking about DICOM, and I know some of the customers I work with will say, hey, sometimes we share JPEG or PNG, PDF, maybe even screenshots of these radiography stills. What's the difference between that and DICOM?
Yeah, and that's a good question because we hear that all the time. In fact, I would say the majority of images that are used by lawyers today are these 2D representations. And they are just that. They're representations. They are not the true medical image itself, but they are one plucked out of a series of medical images. And the way I like to use, I like a lot of analogies, as you know, Ari, but the way I like to use an analogy for that is that while the saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words, well, a DICOM study is worth 1,000 pictures, and sometimes is 1,000 pictures. So there's much more richness to it. You can see things in a 3D model that you would never even imagine seeing in a 2D picture. And so there's a different level of a compelling nature when you see a true medical image.
Right, right, absolutely. I think we may have the results here. Let's see. There we go. So yeah, not super surprising, and actually, I think that this may be not fully representative. We have some customers, so there actually may be a couple PACs in there, but it looks like we've got about 27% saying they're using CDs or storing it physically, about 27% referencing their local network, 36% mentioned a cloud file sharing system like Dropbox, and then 9% using their case management system. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on those results?
Again, not that surprising. I guess the
Yeah,
only surprise that nobody said PAX, but that may be
right.
because they don't really know what a PAX means, and we can get into that in more detail in this webinar. But the vast majority of the way that people use medical images today is still on CDs, so not a big surprise there. File sharing systems like Dropbox and Box.net have become very popular. There's a little bit of a caveat with that one. So one, you're probably not seeing something in DICOM format there. It may just be files that you're transferring, which is okay as long as the person on the other end has a viewer that they can use to see it. But there's some HIPAA questions with using file sharing that we as lawyers are responsible for. We're responsible for ensuring that we are compliant with HIPAA, and most file sharing systems are not. In fact, interestingly enough, most case management systems are not necessarily HIPAA compliant. So if you are putting PHI into your case management system, you might want to ask yourself a few questions about that. Not something that most people are too worried about, but it is letter of the law. got to make sure that it is HIPAA compliant and storing things in a cloud without a BAA. We won't go into that in this webinar. There's plenty of other times that we've done that, but that could be a lack of HIPAA compliance.
Yeah, just looking at the screen, I mean, there's so much more we could talk about and have written articles about, like you mentioned the BAA. But I guess to get right to the meat of this, Les, we're looking at some of what people have done already. Is there a better way to handle these images?
Yeah, sure. So there's a better way, and it is one of the things that we do at Purview is to try to help our clients, our legal clients, use a better way or set up a better way in their offices. So the better way to do this is these files, these studies, if you will, are all digital to start out with. In fact, they're native digital. So the idea of copying them to a CD, albeit a CD is digital, but it's an analog representation of a digital file. It's physical, and you have it. There's no reason to do that. Every one of these files can be sent electronically. They can be received electronically. They can be stored electronically, and they can be shared electronically. The key to this is having a robust cloud-based, purpose-built, cloud-based system that enables you to do this efficiently. And I'm always enthused when we talk to our clients who say that when they've started using the Purview image system, that they become much more efficient in their use. And in fact, it helps them. I won't necessarily say it helps them win more cases, but it helps them be more efficient in generating expert opinions and in sharing information and in making sure that they are top of their game when they get if it gets that far as to get into court.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. That's certainly what I've heard from the customers we work with. This might be a good time for me to show what the system looks like and give the audience an example of a cloud-based PAC system.
Yeah, if you do that, and then once you do that, we'll go through the generalities of it, I think, and then afterwards, let's talk about this new feature function set that we're building into the system because that's really exciting, and I think
Yep.
a lot of the people in this webinar are looking forward to hearing about that.
Definitely, definitely. So I'm going to open this up here. You should all be able to see my screen now.
I can see it.
Perfect. So this is basically what you would see in Purview Image, which is our example of a cloud PAC system used by a number of litigation firms that some of them are with us today. So this right here, that what you're looking at is what we call the study browser, where the studies that we talked about before are stored. When we get the imaging in, and let's say it comes in on a disk from the medical provider, we can drag and drop that directly into the study browser. So that imaging, those studies are populating here. And then maybe we want to look at those studies. We want to review the imaging. And we like to have fun with our anonymized names. We've got Peter Pan, the CT of a chest here. And we'll take a look at that. This is a pretty good representative example. So now you're seeing something akin to what you might see in a viewer that comes along on a disk from the provider, maybe a standalone viewer already installed on your computer, like Haros. But this is a 2D based model of the viewer, and through here we're able to move through these slices. We're able to look at some of the functionality that the viewer brings. So
Yeah,
from
that's the flipping of the cartoons, if you will, as you do
that's
that.
right, we're flipping the cartoon book here. So if we want to share this, we've got this imaging, we want to get this to our experts, maybe we're producing it for opposing counsel. We can come back here to where that image sits and click this share icon. So with that, we're able to take the image, send a link of it right off to our recipient. I'll send this out to you, Les.
Great.
So I'll send this here. And with that, Les will get an email letting him know that the image has been received. So we took that image from the provider, and just like that, we can get it to our expert. We've eliminated the need for
So
CDs.
if I'm your medical expert, I've now got exactly what you had,
Right.
and I'm going to be looking at it in exactly the same viewer that you were looking at it in. So if I'm going to describe it to you, I can describe it to you exactly the way you see it and perceive it. But there's even better, which is that you
That's
can do
right.
it with me real
Yeah,
time.
that's right. We can take it a step further, and we can look at this like Les was alluding to at the exact same time. We've got a feature in here called the simultaneous screen share or a session share. And if we click this, and Les is doing the same thing now, so he's looking at the exact same screen and he hit that exact same icon. Now I see his arrow, and we should all see his arrow now. It's like I'm looking over the shoulder of my physician expert.
And it's funny you use that statement, Ari, because that's exactly what I heard from one of our prospects when we were talking to them, is they said that oftentimes they actually have to drive to where the expert is, sit down with them side by side, have them show the attorney or paralegal in this case what the issue was with the medical image, and then drive back to their office. And this way they can do it in real time, sitting in the comfort of their own office without having to do that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so now Les might be reviewing the image. He might be showing me some of the complexities associated with an injury, an anomaly, disease progression, and so forth. And so that's just one way that we're able to review
Yeah.
this together. So
Yep, that's me. That's me making those changes, just in case you were worried, Ari.
that's right. That's right. So I may sign out of this here. So I'll turn the simultaneous screen share off to show one more consideration that could be helpful. In some of these basic cases, just looking at this 2D base model might suffice. But in some cases, we want to get a deeper look. And we've actually got a 3D rendering capability that's specific to any CTs or MRs we have. This one just has a limited number of images. So as you can see here, we are seeing an actual one-to-one rendering of the three anatomical views taken during that CT procedure. So we're
That's
able to, that's right.
yeah. That's just, I mean, as a lawyer looking at a medical image and realizing that I'm going to have to show somebody in a courtroom what actually happened or what should have happened. This is gold. This is magic.
Yeah, you talked about a picture being worth 1,000 words and DICOM maybe being worth 1,000 pictures or more, and this is worth quite a few when you're in front of a judge and jury, and now we have something significantly deeper than just a general animation or explanation of an injury. We can look at exactly where this has occurred and get a more visceral view.
In fact, Ari, as you know, but it might be worth our audience knowing, our system is also used in forensics now. So medical examiners and forensic scientists are using our system to try to understand injuries, trajectory of bullets or knife wounds, things like that. So it is really powerful stuff.
That's right. Absolutely. And there's maybe one other feature that Les alluded to earlier that could be helpful to look at here, which is a lot of the customers I work with, I know will say, this is great, this accomplishes a lot of what we're looking for, but just in its basic form, we're looking at a patient orientation. So we're looking in this study browser here at a variety of patients. For organizational purposes, it can be helpful to look at this in more of a case orientation. And so, yeah,
It
go ahead.
can be. We've had numerous clients and some recent prospects say to us that when they load a CD, which is mostly how they get images, just what we talked about in the beginning, um, all of the image on that CD likely pertain to the same case. When they load them, they all may be loaded in the system, but they're not tagged or they're not identified as being with the same case. So you can't sort them back out easily. But with tagging, it gives you that opportunity to do that. So you can tag them, and then you can organize all the ones you want for that particular case in one single location.
That's exactly right. So today, the way the system works is that we have a tagging feature that, and I think we've even got some preset tags that show you how this work. You can apply a case number or a matter number to a study and then look that up later. In fact, I'd want to go on the advanced search here, and then
You
I can
actually
pull up.
can do it either way. I've messed up before, and if you did it on the regular search, it'll work fine too.
That's true. That's true. This will give you this case orientation where you can see all the studies associated with the case. But we decided to take that a step further, listening to our
Well,
customers.
yeah, well, we decided because we were told, hey, that's good, but
Right.
as often happens, and let me set the stage for that, Ari. Then you can show a little bit more about it. I know
Yeah,
it's a not released yet function, so it's going to come
that's
off
right.
of some different slides than you have here. But what our client said to us is that's great that you can tag these things, but that's also a kind of a pain in the neck since they all started with the same case, and I uploaded them to your system, and now they're showing up in a client or patient orientation, and then you have to re-tag them. So somebody said, some smart person said, what if you could tag them on the way up? So as you're uploading them, and so go for it, Ari. Show them what we're going
That's
to do.
right. So I'll move out of this and we'll take a look at what that looks like. I think one of those smart people that brought that up is actually with us today, so thank you. This is it's always client feedback that we got. And so this is what we call tagged uploading. And like Les said, this is a way to apply some of that tagging on the way in. You're getting a disk, there's maybe many studies on that disk that are all associated to one case. So as you see on the screenshot here, says up top, and this is just an uploader, a look at the uploader, all studies uploaded on this session will be automatically tagged. So we've got some of these tags that we've ostensibly used before. We can apply them, and now they'll apply to any of the
And
studies that we want to.
and although that says tumor and neural cancer on this slide, it could very well have your case number on here, and then everything that's on that disk as it gets uploaded will show up in our system with your case number already in it.
Right, exactly. And then the flip side of that is, okay, we've taken all these studies, we've associated them with the case, and now we want to share them with our expert. So now that we're sharing them with our expert, we can, and this screenshot shows it perfectly, we can choose which of those studies, potentially all of those studies associated with that case can then be sent to the expert. And you can imagine there are some cases that have multiple clients associated with them. There are some clients that are associated to multiple cases. So this allows you to organize that a little better and get it all to your expert.
Yeah, we always in the system could share multiple studies at the same time, but they had to be aligned by patient. And
Right.
now we're letting you share multiple studies at the same time, aligned by tag or by case number in most cases in the legal profession.
That's right. Yep. So that's how the share function works, and we think this is going to answer what we've been asked for, and will allow for that case orientation and a little bit more organization in how you collect those images.
Yeah, Ari, there was a question that got raised, and let's hit at least one of them real time.
Yes.
But the question was, does the medical expert that you're sharing these records with, do they have to be logged into the system? Do they have to have a license to the system in order to use it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so there's a couple ways that we can do this. Very simply, what I showed earlier when I shared that image out to Les, he didn't need to have a license or a login at all. He just received an email, clicked it, and we viewed it together. We could theoretically credential them in, and there's a case where that does make sense. But very simply, no, you can just send this right out to an expert, and there's no login required.
And and even if you do have an expert that you do want to credential into your system, there's no extra charge for that, right?
That's right. That's right. They're just considered another user, and we have the ability to change user permissions, so we can make it that they can only see studies that have actually been assigned to them, so they're not seeing everything you're working on.
Great.
Yep. So I think that covers our tagging, our tagged uploader, and what that entails. Um, it could be a good time to just open this up to the audience and hear what's on everyone's mind. If there are any questions that you have, we would love to answer those.
And let me just jump in with one statement that I wanted to make sure that people are aware of, because we've run into this in the marketplace. So there's a new category of player, if you will, in the medical imaging space, and they're usually called ROIs, or release of information vendors. And these release of information vendors, they're the vendors you love to hate. They're the ones who say, I'm working for the provider that you're trying to get images from, and I'd be happy to provide those to you as long as you give me a king's ransom worth of money to do that. And then they burn you some discs and send those to you. The question has arisen multiple times: can they send those to you electronically rather than sending them on CDs, make it quicker, easier, and potentially cheaper? And the answer is absolutely they can. In fact, we're working with one of those vendors, one of the major vendors, to do exactly that, specifically for lawyers. So lawyers who have a Purview imaging system can receive electronically rather than CD the images that come from the ROI vendor.
Great. And now, if we're thinking about sharing before we get some more questions in here, if we're thinking about sharing with our experts, is there a way to share an image with multiple experts at the same time?
Yeah, it's a great question. Come up before. And oftentimes, I won't say oftentimes, sometimes, firms like to test out their images or their medical cases with multiple experts to see which ones have the expertise, which ones have the articulation that they want, which ones have the opinions that make the most sense to them. And in that case, you can actually do a share with multiple at the same time. They don't see what each other is doing. All they see is what I saw when Ari shared with me. They see the medical image with the viewer. Very important that they realize that they're getting a viewer embedded. They don't have to go onto the disc and use that rudimentary viewer that comes on the CD sometimes, or maybe all the time. And they don't have to worry if they have a different operating system, if they have a Mac rather than a PC because the viewer doesn't work with it. They'll get the viewer right along with it. It works in a browser window, and it will work with anybody's system. In fact, it even works on a tablet or even a smartphone if that's what you need. But yeah, you can send to multiple people at the same time in one single share.
Great. We've got a couple other questions coming in, and one of them that I just typed answer, but I guess I should have said, it asked if this is being recorded. This is being recorded. You'll get a recording after this is done, so if you missed anything, don't worry. The other question here is, when will the feature be released?
Yes. I joke about this a little bit because we're a software company, and so usually the answer for the software company is next month, but they don't tell you what that is, when next month is, or they'll say February and they won't tell you what year it is. In our case, this is something that we've got in development right now. We're pretty confident that we will have it in commercial form available to our customers by the end of this quarter. So it is something that is right in line right now that's happening. Some of the screens that you showed were mock-ups that we did to try to understand what this should look like when we get it back. And in fact, well, I don't know if I'm previewing something that you're going to talk about later, but if you're a participant today and you want to get an early peek, perhaps a beta copy of it when it's ready, let Ari know, and we might be able to put you in the queue for that as well.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, we are doing that. Great. This other question here is, does the system have the ability to remove all identifying data from a study? And the context is, I've had to create a few double-blind studies for experts to see if they properly identify issues while not knowing which image is related to the case. That can be very difficult. What are your thoughts on that, Les?
Sorry, you're going to have to say that one again. I lost track of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through this too. So does the system have the ability to remove all identifying data? So I imagine
Okay,
all
so
private health
yeah.
information.
So if you stop there, the answer is yes. There's something called a DICOM edit that's in the that study browser that you showed,
Yep.
and that DICOM edit will allow you to change, de-identify certain portions of an image. But as a lawyer, I always give you a big caveat when you're talking about de-identifying an image, and that is that from a pure evidentiary point of view, you've now tampered with the evidence. So you've actually now altered the evidence, and it doesn't have as good a probative value. I think if you do that, that's why we suggest tagging, which is done outside of the image, does not impact the image for that. And typically, anonymization is not necessarily something that you want to do, at least if you're going to enter it into evidence at trial. Now, if you want to share it with an expert that way, you certainly could do that. Perhaps the easiest way to do that is to simply share it with that specific expert after it's been de-identified, and then change it back, re-identify it if you're going to use it for evidence purposes.
Yeah, that's good context, and I think the person asking the question is a legal nurse, and it's a really good question because the background she gave is that she's creating these studies for experts to see if they can identify the issues without knowing which image is related to the case. So that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. We have a lot of teaching professionals that do that as well. I talked to one yesterday, and they de-identify everything and then send it out to their students and ask them to come back and tell them, what's going on with the particular study that they're doing. But again, if you change, even if you, and I saw one of the questions came in about editing a DICOM tag to fix a typo.
Yep.
Even if you edit a DICOM tag to fix a typo, you potentially are changing the evidence. So if you're going to use that at trial, you might want to be aware of that. Again, do it separate and apart from what you're going to use as the actual evidence for the trial.
Great. And there's a question here just about going over a process that we talked about again. So she asks, can you go over the process of uploading the image to the system? I find it takes multiple steps, or maybe that's something I should address with the help desk. We can. Les, do you want me to pop this open and show how
Yeah,
that
why don't you
works?
pop it open just for a second, and
Sure.
we can talk about it, and we can do it. We can go. You did it quickly, which was great, but let's go a little bit slower. Let's assume for a minute that you get a CD of studies. So you get a
Right.
CD of studies. It comes to your office. The first thing you do in our system, Ari, is you click on the add studies, and what? Yeah, but even before you do the drag and drop, if you look at that drop down that's
Hmm.
there, it says upload from folders or disks. So you actually can click on that. If you have a CD drive on the particular machine that you're running this on, when you click upload folders or disks, it will show you your whole list, whether it's Windows or Mac, it'll show you your whole list of drives that are available. You can point to the CD drive and click and be done. You don't even have to worry about dragging and dropping. That will load everything into the study browser. So it should be, I'll call it one-click uploading. If it's not working for you that way, the person who asked that question, please either ask Ari after the session or do contact our help desk. They can help you with that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely the simplest way. I'll get out of the share here. Okay. The other question is, can you duplicate the image and edit one of them?
Yeah, so it's a good question. You can't duplicate the image within the Purview system. So what you would have to do is you would have to load that image into another system that actually can duplicate the study, and then you're going to have to modify it before it gets to Purview. The nice part about a PAC system is it's a purpose-built system, but it also will only take one version, one copy of each particular study. So if you try to load two studies of the same studies, even if they might be de-identified in different ways, it's going to reject it. So you're going to have to do something in advance to get it in the system. But it's a really good question. It's not something that we are capable of doing in our system today. But as you heard, we listen very hard. So maybe that's something for the future.
We do. We do. And then the last question I see here is and this is a great question, maybe something I should have mentioned. What if I want my client to share the images they have on CD? Can they upload? And they can.
Without coming to your office, they can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a neat feature in the system, which is we call it an untethered uploader. And what that is the same exact uploader function that you saw that already did that drag and drop, but it allows you to send it to them, let's just say in an email with a hyperlink. When they click on that link, up on their screen pops the uploader itself. It is a secure connection to our or your cloud in this case. All they have to do is drag and drop their image or their CD right to that same uploader, and it will automatically load onto your system in your cloud without them having to remember to carry the CD to your office, which often happens, they forget, or without having to worry about whether that CD has been damaged or altered. You'll get it. You can look at it and say, okay, that was the wrong image. Can you get your provider to provide a different image before you waste the time of having them sitting in front of you in your office? But yeah, really, really powerful. We use that in the medical profession as well a lot, which is patient needs to get their doctor an urgent view of their image, and they can do that instantaneously.
That's right. It's just another step to getting rid of CDs, chipping away piece by piece.
We're trying. That's one of our goals. If you look at my LinkedIn page, you'll see it's do away with CDs.
Yep. Yep. Great. Well, I think those are the questions we had. So we've got a little bit of information about what's coming next, and let's tease this, but we are going to have some beta testing, so to speak. So if you want early access to this, shoot me an email. I've got my email written at the bottom here. It's ari@purview.net, or you can reach out to the sales team in general. It's sales@purview.net, and we're happy to help you and make sure it's a fit for your practice, but also get that in your hands. And there's a few other resources, as you see here, that will be coming to you over email. We've got a guide for law firms and a white paper on the effective use of medical imaging and litigation. So stay tuned for those. And I appreciate everyone coming here. I appreciate everyone making time for this.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions related to this that we didn't deal with today, or you were too timid to raise the question in a group, raise them to Ari or to sales@purview.net, and we'd be happy
Yep,
to handle them for you.
absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for your time, Les. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you, Ari.